It's great to have you here. This is the first Sunday, the first part of our More to Life week. And we're going to be asking all week, is there more to life? And this morning we're thinking, is there more to life than meets the eye? More to life than what we can see and touch and put in a test tube? And so as we think about this, we're going to start by watching a short music video. This was released in 2008. You may be familiar with it. It was very popular at the time. And it asks some very interesting questions when you consider that the singer is not actually singing this, I think, about another person, but is actually singing it to God, if God is there. So listen to the words of the song. This one was filmed at Glastonbury, but see what you think of what he says.
If the fish swam out of the ocean and grew legs and they started walking, and the apes climbed down from the trees and grew tall and they started talking, and the stars fell out of the sky and my tears rolled into the ocean, and now I'm looking for a reason why you even set my world into motion. 'Cause if you're not really here, then the stars don't even matter. Now I fell to the top with fear that it's all just a bunch of matter. 'Cause if you're not really here, I don't wanna be either. I wanna be next to you. Black and gold, black and gold, black and gold. I look up into the night sky, I see 1,000 eyes staring back, and all around these golden beacons I see nothing but black, 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 black. I feel the weight of something beyond them. I don't see what I can feel. If vision is the only validation, then most of my life isn't real. 'Cause if you're not really here, then the stars don't even matter. Now I fell to the top with fear that it's all just a bunch of matter. 'Cause if you're not really here, then I don't wanna be either. I wanna be next to you. Black and gold, black and gold, black and gold. Really here, then the stars don't even matter. And now I fell to the top with fear that it's all just a bunch of matter. 'Cause if you're not really here, then I don't wanna be either. I wanna be next to you. Black and gold, black and gold, black and gold.
Oh yeah. That's a cool version of it. Very interesting song, isn't it? He's saying, if you're not really here, the stars don't even matter. I'm filled to the top with fear that it's all just a bunch of matter. That was released in 2008. 27 years before that, John Lennon released another song, didn't he? He said, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Very different lyrics, weren't they? But actually, I want to suggest this morning we do that. Why don't we imagine that that is the case? Let's imagine there is no God, no hell, no heaven, nothing but what we can see or touch. Nothing but what science can prove in a laboratory. I mean, at the end of the day, if there was a God, then surely he would make it more obvious, wouldn't he? And if there was a God, he would obviously not allow the suffering we see in our worlds. And if there was a God, lots more people would believe in him. I mean, if there was a God, why would he allow the general majority of our society to live our lives without him? It's popular to get rid of God. The BBC have got rid of God. So let's all get rid of God. Let's just imagine there is no heaven, okay? That's what we're going to do this morning. It'd be much easier, wouldn't it? There's just a few problems. If we're going to get rid of God, well, I guess one of the first problems we've got is this. Why is there anything at all? I mean, not just technical Lego models, but why is there a world, a universe, space, time, matter? Why is there anything at all? You see, it used to be very easy for people to say, well, you know, the world has always existed. Everything is there because everything has always been there. That was, of course, until the theory of the Big Bang was put forward and people realized that the world hadn't always been there. That there was a time when, in fact, there was nothing there. No space, no matter, no time, no nothing. And of course, the question is, if you had nothing and then you had everything, what caused nothing to become everything? It's a little bit of a problem. In fact, as I looked into it, I realized it was a bigger problem, not for the Christians, but for the atheists who always thought that, well, everything was always there. But we can get out of this one quite easily. You see, recently, Stephen Hawking said this in his latest book. He said, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. So because Stephen Hawking has said it, problem solved, okay? Big, famous scientist, we don't need to worry. But actually, let's just think about what he said for a minute. Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. Well, firstly, gravity is not nothing, is it? Gravity is something. He smuggled that in somewhere. And secondly, gravity is a law, and laws don't create, do they? I mean, the law of arithmetic will explain why you may or may not have lots of money in your bank, but unfortunately, the law of arithmetic will not create a lot of money in your bank. It will only explain why there is or isn't a lot of money there. A law doesn't create, a law explains. And yet he's just said this law is responsible for everything and has given us no basis for where the law comes from. See, Stephen Hawking is a very, very intelligent scientist. But even very, very intelligent scientists can say some very silly things, can't they? That don't make sense. Okay, well, let's put that one on one side. You know, let's not worry about that one too much. But there's another problem, isn't there? The problem is this. Why are we even thinking about this? Why do grown men and women ask questions like, is there more to life? And what is the purpose of life? Why are we rational thinking beings? Why do we worry about whether things are true or not? Why is truth so important? Why is education such a valuable part of society? And why should I trust what my brain tells me? See, think of it this way. If we've got rid of God, because let's get rid of him, then what do we have to explain my mind and your mind and the minds of the greatest scientists of the world? Well, the only thing we've got to explain it is evolution. Our minds are the end result of a long process of evolution. Now, what is the driving force behind evolution? What is the thing that makes it tick? Survival. Whether something is useful for my survival is the most important thing or not. Not truth. So why should I assume that after the long process of evolution, of which survival has been the driving force, that my brain has actually evolved to tell me what is true and not just what is useful? Why should I trust the convictions of my brain when it tells me that God exists or that God doesn't exist? Why should I trust my brain or your brain at all? You say, well, you'd say that, but here's someone else who said it. Charles Darwin, he put forward the theory of evolution. Don't worry about the phone number there, I'm not sure whose that is. Well, you could try texting it, I guess. It's not Darwin's, I know. But he said this, but then with me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which have been developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust in the convictions of a monkey's mind if there are convictions in such a mind? See, when I get rid of God and I become a naturalist, I say that all there is nature, then my problem is I have to doubt all convictions about truth, including the conviction there is no God. Bit of a problem. But let's not worry about that too much either, okay? We can handle a few doubts, can't we? Let's stick with our atheism for a minute, but there is another problem. What about the fact that there's so many things in my life that are really important? I can't see. I can't test them. I can't stick them in a test tube. What is love? Beauty. And what makes beauty different to something that's ugly? What makes virtue better than sin and wrong? What is self-sacrifice, and why is that good rather than self-serving? Where do those things come from? Because if at the end of the day, all my mind is a chemical reaction, then all those things are chemical reactions. Listen to Francis Crick. He said, "You, your joys and sorrows, memories, ambitions, sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells. Who you are is nothing but a load of neurons." But is that true? Is that true of everything, including the things that are really important? You might say, of course, that we have evolved to think that certain things are important, that certain things are more useful. But there are lots of things in life that we say are precious and important and valuable that aren't necessarily beneficial for the evolutionary scheme. Where do they come from? Well, let's ask Richard Dawkins. He should know the answer, shouldn't he? Well, he's given us the answer. That's not his number either. But Richard Dawkins said this: they are misfirings, Darwinian mistakes. That's all they are. They're blessed, precious mistakes, he says, although I'm not sure where he gets that moral judgment from, because that's also obviously a misfiring. But that's all they are. But is that true? Are all the things that are most important to us in life just a chemical reaction? It's a bit of a problem, isn't it, if that's the case? And so, like Sam Sparrow, I find myself saying, I'm filled to the top with fear that it is just a bunch of matter. If vision is the only validation, most of my life isn't real. Doesn't make sense, does it? Well, someone else who saw that this doesn't make sense was John Cleese. So we're going to watch another short video clip, and he is going to, in a rather more humorous way than I can, illustrate where this, not scientific philosophy, for this is not what we're looking at this morning, but this naturalistic philosophy takes us. And we'll see what he has to say.
Hello. We scientists have now located a gene which we scientists believe gives people the need to believe in God. In other words, this God gene releases chemicals into our body which create the impression that there is meaning in the universe. And this God gene is just here, between the gene which we scientists now know makes us eat coconut ice cream after a fish dinner, and this gene here, which causes people with weak egos to grasp around desperately for simple explanations. Now, the discovery of this God gene is a big step forward in our quest to show that every bit of human behavior can be explained away mechanically, because we've now also located the gene which makes some people believe that every piece of human behavior can be explained away mechanically, and it's here, right next to the gene that makes you go to see Nicolas Cage movies, so that's another puzzle solved, and right under this gene, which can cause you to forget that since the 1920s, quantum physics has destroyed forever the idea that everything can be explained mechanically. Now, the gene which causes us to forget this obvious fact is very dominant in some people, especially me. And we scientists now know that it's closely linked to this gene here, which gives you such a weak sense of self that you hang on to anything that makes you feel more secure emotionally, whether it's fundamentalist religion or a reductionist view of the universe, which is right over this gene here that makes you want to punch people in the head when they take the scientific process and subject it to their pathological literal mindedness. Thank you. I needed that. And by the way, we now know that there is a gene that causes you to say, thank you, I needed that, just there, when you were punched in the head.
Brilliant. There you go. That is John Thies for you. But actually, he's making a very serious point. The problem is not with science. Science is great. There are many Christians who love science. The problem seems to be not with science, but the naturalistic philosophy that sometimes lies behind it, that says there is nothing but science. Okay, maybe actually, given that the universe exists, given that I'm thinking, given that most things in life cannot be validated by putting them in a test tube, maybe, just maybe, there is space, there is something else. Maybe there is more to life than what meets the eye, what you can see and touch. Maybe there is more to life, but how would we know what it is? Maybe the only conclusion is to become a skeptic, an agnostic. Maybe the only conclusion is to say, okay, there might be, but we just don't know. That would seem fairly logical, wouldn't it? I mean, so far, maybe all you've got so far in this service is confused. So we should just leave confused. Because if there was a God, we would want more than just clues, wouldn't we? We would want more than just hints and philosophical discussions. If I'm going to believe in God, I want God to make himself clear. I want him to make himself known. I want him to show up. And yet, actually, that's exactly what people claim that he has done. Let's read a few sentences from a letter that was written from one of the eyewitnesses of Jesus to a group of early Christians in 1 John chapter 1. Hopefully the words might be able to come up on the screen. And John, writing to them, says this: "That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at and our hands have touched, this we proclaim concerning the word of life. The life appeared. We have seen it, and we testify to it, and we proclaim to you the eternal life which was with the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you also may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. We write this to make our joy complete." You see, what skeptics like you and me need is evidence, something we can see, something we can touch, something we can feel. And John says, that's exactly what God has done. He revealed himself in a way that could be seen and touched and heard. John, in his earlier book, his gospel, said this: the Word, this concept, this God, this Creator, became flesh, became human. And you could see him. You could touch him. And that makes me start to think, if this was true, then we're not left simply with agnosticism, are we? And skepticism. Because God has made himself clear. But we can get out of that one, can't we? We can say, well, come on, you've just read from the Bible. How can I accept the Bible? All of this stuff about Jesus, it's historically unreliable. It was created by people in the 4th century to try and give themselves some political basis for what they wanted to do. We don't need to listen to all of these ridiculous claims. Then I discovered a bit of a problem. People who say that are not normally the historians that have looked at the claims. In fact, normally the people that say that, I've discovered, are the people who are quite ignorant of the history behind the claims. And then I start to look at people like Richard Borkham, very clever people who have spent their life looking at the historical evidence for the New Testament. And I discover that these people have the audacious idea that actually these books were written by people in the first century, by people who were actually eyewitnesses of the events. That actually these things could have actually happened. It makes me start to think there might be more in it than I first thought. But come on, you say. Could we really kind of allow this God stuff into our lives? It's not very popular, is it? No, I just can't. I couldn't allow that to happen. But is it can't, or is it won't? You see, are our reasons for rejecting God primarily intellectual because we think the evidence won't lead us there, or are they more moral, that we don't want to go where the evidence might lead? Listen to what Thomas Nagel says. He's professor of philosophy at New York University. And in his book, Mind and Cosmos, he said this: I want atheism to be true, and I'm made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent people I knew were religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want a universe like that. See what he's saying? He's being very honest, isn't he? He's saying, actually, my atheism doesn't come because I've looked at the evidence and I'm convinced it's the only logical option. The only intelligent people could be atheists. He's saying, actually, I don't want a universe to be like that. Which strikes me that actually, at our heart, one of our reasons behind rejecting God is because we don't like the idea of God. We don't want there to be a God. But I wonder, when you think of God, what are you thinking? If you're thinking that there might be more to life than meets the eye, what would that God be like? A divine dictator? A cosmic killjoy? An infinitely powerful policeman? I have to confess, I got back yesterday from being away. I had a lovely letter in my postbox from Germany. I thought, maybe it's from one of my friends in Germany. And so I quickly opened it up, and it was all in German. And it had a photograph of me. Oh, wow, photograph of me. But it was actually from a speed camera in Germany from 2 months ago. And I knew I'd got caught. I thought I got away with it. But there it was. They'd caught up with me. The police, they're there. And it was my fault. I need to pay the fine. I don't try to get out of that. But when we think of God, we can often think of the divine policeman. He's always trying to catch up with us. And we kind of hope, just like I had been hoping for the last 2.5 months, that they had forgotten about it. But he will do eventually. And so we suppress it, push it to the back of our minds, and hope it's not there. Is that what God is like? Listen again to what John says about this word, this life, this God that had appeared. He says, "This we proclaim to you, the word of life. The life appeared, and we have seen it and testified to it. We proclaim to you the eternal life, which was from the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. We write this to make our joy complete." See, when we think of God, what do we think of? Do we think of death and darkness and judgment and negative attributes that make us want to run from him? And yet John says this God has appeared to bring life, not death. Joy, not drudgery. He's come to give us life. Life to the full, Jesus said. Life in all its fullness. Life as it was meant to be lived. Joy. Real, deep, lasting joy. And fellowship. Well, actually, fellowship doesn't always strike us as being such a positive thing, do we? Anyone that's been around churches a little while, when they think of fellowship, might think of weak tea and cold quiche. At least that's what I think of when I think of fellowship. But that's not what the Bible means by fellowship. It means intimate, deep relationship with the God who made you, with a God who loves you, with a God who wants to give you life. You see, I come to the realization that the reason why many of us are rejecting God is not because the evidence has led us there, not because science says we must, because it doesn't, but because we've got the wrong view of God. If we could just see a little of what God is like, it might start to change things. I wonder about you. Do you think there's more to life than meets the eye? Do you know about God? Do you know God personally? That's what we're going to be talking about this week. We'd love you to keep coming. We'd love you to find out more. Maybe you are a skeptic this morning. Maybe you're saying, well, I'm just not sure. Here's a prayer that the biggest skeptic could pray. God, if you're there, show yourself to me, and I'm willing to go where the evidence takes me. Now, you don't have to own up to anything you don't yet believe, but it would be a start, wouldn't it? If this is real, if you are there, then I want to get involved. You know, God doesn't reject us because of our doubts. It's very encouraging. Maybe you're saying, well, I just got so many doubts and so many questions. Well, that's okay. There were many people in the Bible that had doubts. Some of them were Jesus' closest followers. And Jesus didn't reject them. But rather, he increasingly gave them what they needed to overcome those doubts and have confidence. There was a guy in the Bible who came to Jesus, and Jesus said to him, do you believe? And Jesus said, I do, but I'm not sure whether I do. He said, I believe, but help my unbelief. And Jesus didn't say, come back when you're more certain. He said, that's enough to get started. You can come to God with your doubts, but with an open heart. And that could be enough to get started. And then with that open heart and that willingness to investigate, you can come back and find out more as the week goes on and investigate and ask those questions, starting from tonight and throughout the week. And say, is there more to life? Yes, there is.